took 2 hours, 38 minutes, 7.3 million tokens, and just $2 to let AI read a 160-page motorcycle manual. Today, you're going to hear exactly how we turned that monster PDF into an off-the-shelf feature for Commercian AI customers and why it matters for every business looking to harness AI's power for handling big documents. Welcome to Pulling Back the Curtain on Commercian AI. I'm your host, Beth Walls. Over this series, we're taking a look behind the scenes of the technology powering our ERP and CRM integrations. No fluff, just real-world engineering. In the studio with me today are co-founders of Commerciant, Richard Jenkins, and Commerciant's own AI master wizard, Aubrey Van Zyl. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks.
So on today's episode, we're digging into how we slice, dice, and contextualize a huge PDF so that a sales team can search it in seconds instead of spending hours digging through manuals. So let's just jump right into it. Richard, can you maybe give us an overview of what this customer came to us with?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Beth. So what we have is, it's 2000. It was 2025, about 3 months ago. So that was around about February. We had a customer approach us, and they said, "I'm interested in the AI. I got your message, but I just can't believe that this is going to be able to work for us because we have a very unique business." And so they gave us the challenge. So part of their business is that they deal with antique motorcycles from the 1950s and 60s and 70s and so on. A lot of these motorcycles, the companies don't exist, but what's left behind is a legacy of motorcycles on the road. They need to be repaired, and there are a lot of enthusiasts that really get into these things. A lot of these are like the old British motorcycles, and what they have is, they had a challenge. How can AI work for us? And they didn't really come to us asking for a solution to anything in particular. They just couldn't would be surprised if AI offered a solution. So what we did was we explained how AI could possibly work for them, and I'll go into that in a minute. And then they gave us some sample content to work with to see if we could turn it into a workable AI solution. So it was pretty interesting because normally, nowadays with modern products and companies that are still in existence, when you ask them for data, it's usually in a digital format. Digital meaning web pages, text, emails, PDFs, spreadsheets, things that are already in textual format, right?
And so these were actually paper copies of the actual manuals. We're talking stuff with coffee stains on them from years and years ago from being used over and over. Is that right, Richard? Exactly,
yeah. So we were given a pile of documentation from these vintage motorcycle manuals. Like you said, some had stains, some were scanned a little bit crooked, some had torn pages and so on. And so what you get is these large PDFs, even just to load them, they're large because they're hundreds of pages each. And they're essentially just large scanned images like you would put on your flatbed scanner and scan a photograph. So there was no digital text inside of these things. It was all just imagery. So kind of like looking at old newspapers, when you look online or you look at Ancestry.com and you look at old manifests of people arriving in the States on a ship, and you see their handwritten instructions of handwritten data. A lot of it was. It wasn't as bad as the handwritten data, fortunately, but it was these old documents and all different kinds of layouts and things like that. So our challenge was to go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask a question of Aubrey here. So with big documents like that, what's the challenge? It seems like AI seems to handle documents fairly well.
Yeah, initially we thought, well, okay, we've got these scanned documents, some dating from the 1930s all the way to the 1970s. So we thought, okay, let's just load it into ChatGPT, and that should work. But it turned out that that doesn't work at all. These documents are like 200 pages. ChatGPT might give you 4 if you're lucky, right? And so we realized very early on that your standard user functionality exposed by most AI platforms didn't help us at all, right? It was completely inadequate.
So Richard, can you dig into that a little bit more for us? You've talked to me about this before. So there's some serious limitations on the standard consumer side of tools like ChatGPT.
Yeah. So if you think about what Aubrey just said, I mean, if you're using a free version of ChatGPT or any of these tools, Gemini, etc., if you're using a free version, if you drop a 200-page set of 200 images, essentially, high-resolution images, into an engine like that and ask it to read them all and make sense of it, because I want to now ask you some questions, they just simply cannot afford to do that. That's the problem. That they could probably technologically they could achieve something, but financially they cannot afford to have somebody drop 200 images, high resolution, and have them process them in exceptional detail.
Because it all takes time, and all of that time takes server power.
Tons of it, yeah. I mean, we're not just talking about standard, servers with CPUs. We're talking about those expensive GPUs. And these companies are sharing these GPUs amongst all their customers. And there are data centers with hundreds of thousands of GPUs consuming inordinate amounts of power. Some of these data centers use as much power as a small country. So their limitations are horsepower per customer and cost. And whether it's a $0 subscription or a $20 subscription, there's not a whole lot of difference. If everybody starts dropping, hundreds of thousands of photographs and videos and stuff, these systems just couldn't possibly cope with that kind of data being input by users. So, as Aubrey said, a lot of them, they give the user they end up giving the user, the consumer, a bad taste of AI. I think a consumer walks away thinking, it seemed to do an okay job, but it didn't really tell me there was an error, but it just didn't really work on the whole document. And that's kind of how they're set up to run, is that they don't come out and tell you, hey, we only ran through 4 pages of your 200-page document. So, just be aware. They actually just say nothing. And they just appear to have succeeded, but they really didn't.
So like a standard employee, right? They won't tell you that they didn't read the whole context. They just went through with it and hope that it's good.
That's right. Yeah. So the user is just sitting there thinking that perhaps this AI stuff is not all it's cracked up to be. So I think that's what Aubrey had said in the past, is that I think sometimes they can give AI a bit of a bad name, because we're in this ramping up stage at the moment in the world, where AI is trying to ramp up. It's trying to meet consumer demand, and the resources are just not all there yet.
So, Aubrey, we found these documents. We've got these documents. We know that our standard tools are not reading through the whole thing. How did you start how did you start engineering this so that Commercian's AI could handle these documents?
Well, initially we thought let's go the standard route, just do OCR, where we use standard software to actually just convert the text in the images to normal text. Okay, there were lots of embedded images as well, which already that we knew was going to be a challenge, but we thought, okay, well, let's give the text to normal OCR and give maybe the images to an AI just to tell us, just to describe the images. So if there's an image of a car, then the AI would say, oh, there's an image of a car, it has all these features, and it's right in this position. And so that was the initial idea. And then we thought the load on the artificial intelligence wouldn't be that much, right? But that didn't turn out well, because in these manuals, you've got massive amounts of tables, you've got different columns, and the OCR just couldn't handle that. And besides all of that, when they scanned in these manuals, somebody also went and stamped huge copyright signs everywhere to make sure everybody understood that these manuals were scanned in by a specific person, right?
Oh, so they're
yeah.
obscured. The messaging is obscured on the pages. That's very difficult for AI to be able to scan and review.
Yeah, for traditional OCR. So the next step, we thought, okay, let's step back. Let's try to split the document up into pages. So we submit one page at a time to the LLMs, because we thought, okay, they can't handle 200 pages, but at least they can handle one. Okay, and so if you give them one, you repeat it 200 times, at least, so in that way you will work through the document. And yeah, that worked well, actually. So we did away with traditional OCR. We just gave the images straight to the LLMs and asked it, okay, just you yourself read what is in the image, transcribe it, and then in position, you can put in the descriptions of the images. And later on we saw, no, we'll give the user a prompt, and the user can tell the artificial intelligence how they want the pages to be transcribed, which turned out to be extremely powerful, because you can tell the user can tell the artificial intelligence, no, I want this data in Markdown, or I want it in JSON, or I want it in CSV, or whatever format you want, and the artificial intelligence will correctly deal with that. And there were many other interesting things, like in these old manuals, you've got huge indexes that tell you this topic is on this page. And so it's really important to actually capture the page numbers from such a manual.
And you could talk about the paper page numbers, right?
Yeah, not the PDF page numbers, but the actual original page numbers, since the indexes are all running off of the original numbering, not the PDF numbering. So you can tell the AI, search for the page number. If you find it, please put it there. If you don't find it, just please put a message that says, well, sorry, I couldn't find the page number. And so that also turned out to be very powerful. And so giving the control to the user proved very powerful, but there was one more challenge, and that is you want the user to be able to see the result of their prompt, right? So how do you show the user in a legible way what they actually achieved? Because normally, even with a prompt and everything, even doing it page by page, you just get one big piece of illegible text. It's legible, but you don't know where one page starts and another one stops. And so we had to find a way to show the user that, okay, this is the first page, this is the second page, and this is what the AI came back with.
Right.
So
I think some of that is interesting because the AI engine doesn't really care too much about the text that you're giving it. If your paragraphs, if your sentences go from one sentence to another, and then it goes to the next page, and the sentence just carries on immediately, in the same line, in the same row. The AI doesn't really care, but when a human looks at it, they need to be able to visualize, like, oh, there's a page break. I know that because visually I can see, there's a gap, and that represents a page break, or maybe there's a dash 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 that goes across the page that represents a page break. So you need to, for the human to be able to see the results and make sense and be comfortable, you got to display it in a nicer layout. Is that what you were saying, Aubrey?
Yeah, exactly. So that was quite a challenge.
And why does the human need to see? Why does the human care so much to see it?
Well, there's non-obvious things like you will tell the AI, okay, please transcribe the text. And then when you go and look at it, you'll see, oh, there was a table and it transcribed it column by column, right? And then obviously a table should be interpreted row by row, right? And so to a human, it's obviously garbage. But to the AI, it did faithfully transcribe it. It just did it column by column, right? And so there's lots of artifacts like that. Or sometimes maybe one column may or may not have data, and the AI might not intuitively figure that out and indicate, oh, this is an empty cell, right? And if you're a human, you'll immediately see that, and you can tell it, no. If there's a blank space, that means there's no information. Please don't. If you're doing JSON, please put a null, or you can do finely grained instructions if you find it necessary.
Earlier you were talking about OCR and traditional OCR, and just for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's I remember it as a kid in the 80s and 90s, where if you received a fax and you wanted to get the fax into the computer, into your word processor, you would scan the fax, and then the OCR software would read character by character, optical character recognition. And this was in the 80s and 90s. It would try to make sense of the scanned fax, as an example. And even as good as faxes were, they used to have a lot of trouble. Now, one of the things you mentioned to me before was the layout of text in a page can be difficult to work with. I think you mentioned some newspaper examples. Maybe you were trying to do a project for I think it was for your dad. Do you want to just talk about how some of that experience helped you going into this project?
Well, for me, this all started trying to mine newspapers for specific bits of information. And I was trying to use all the different LLMs to just simply upload the newspaper, even one page at a time, and trying to get back answers. And I soon realized that the AI is just failing silently. it doesn't tell you that it doesn't read everything. And it just, no matter what you do, you cannot get it to give you answers or even to read the text. And if you ask it to write a program to actually ingest the newspaper, that also doesn't work, because it typically uses normal OCR or something else in the background, and every time all you get back is garbage or only one page at most. And it was extremely frustrating. And even now, there's no system beyond, no standard consumer system that can do it.
And I think we're all, like, as humans, we look at a newspaper and we're taught at some point in our lives, we're taught newspapers have text on one large page, and the text is in these narrow columns. That's just the layout that the typesetters or editors chose back in the day. And we're taught how to read a newspaper. You read down the column, and then you go to the next column and you read it. And it's pretty obvious. Somebody might even be listening to this thinking, like, what are you talking about? That's dead obvious. Well, it's obvious to us because when we look at it, we know how to read it. But to a computer, it just sees a page of text, and
a space is a space to a computer.
Yeah, exactly. Space is a space. It happens to be a slightly larger space between two columns, but that's fine. It's just a couple of spaces. So it'll read the text. It can read the text from left across the column to the right, and then go to the next row. And it jumbles together two columns of texts, sentences. It merges them, and it becomes illegible, useless.
Yeah, and at one stage we thought, okay, let's do OCR and then fix it with AI, right? So you just fix the spelling mistake or the stuff that didn't scan, and that worked, except now you've got column 1 space column 2 as the rest of the sentence, next row column 1 part of the sentence, space. So even using AI to fix OCR afterwards didn't give a good result, because you fix the characters, but you cannot fix the actual peculiarities caused by the layouts.
That's fascinating. So we've talked a lot about the sticking points with consumer AI and being able to read and parse all of this information in these huge documents. Richard, maybe you can explain to us a little bit about how commercial AI is different. Why would a business come to us versus using one of these consumer products?
Yeah. So I think when you look at some of these, when we read the headlines that a large company has worked with IBM, and they've put together, maybe it's the Ford Motor Company, and they've put together, some type of AI project, and it's saved countless amounts of time and energy on helping staff and customers and partners. Because now it's all powered by AI. Those projects don't just happen, in a month, and they don't just happen with consumer AI for $20 a month or $200 a month, and one person who just makes it happen. These projects are large, and they require a lot of thought and effort. When you're looking at that scale, but when you're looking at small and medium-sized businesses, obviously they don't have the resources to employ or to hire in AI experts. If you're running a motorcycle company, doing these vintage motorcycles, you're not gonna be thinking I'm going to go hire five AI experts, put them in their room for 6 months and change my business. It's just not on your mind. But you'd like to use AI. So what Commercian does is makes I would say it's an enterprise product, but it's for the small and medium-sized businesses, so it's affordable. It can be implemented rapidly. And what we do is everything that we have done in our AI product becomes productized, so that another company can come along and make use of it. So an example, we recognize that every business is sitting on a mountain of information. We've all been doing business in the digital age for 25 years, since if you start at the year 2000. We've all got websites, PDFs, we've got training materials, we've got videos online, we've got handbooks for our staff, we've got instruction books, customer manuals on how to use our products, technical guides, all sorts of the ISO documents, you name it. These small and medium-sized businesses have a treasure trove of information. They just don't know how to use it. So in AI. So what Commercian does is creates a platform where they can load their corporate data, and the Commercian system can make sense of it. It can ingest it and make sense of their documents, any format, Excel, Word, Google Docs, etc. The PDFs. The next thing is the AI can also ingest. When it ingests those documents, it makes clever decisions. For example, if it finds that the document is a large scanned document, it goes down a different workflow to process the document, and that's what So that's using this technology that that Aubrey has been discussing, so that it makes better sense of certain types of PDFs. And we applied that also to other documents, not just PDFs. Whether it's web pages, whether it's web pages, Microsoft Office documents, we're processing them intelligently and in a deep manner. And when I say in a deep manner, just to note, on some of these documents for these 150-page PDFs, it could take 2 hours of processing, consume millions of tokens, and come out, costing us $2, for example, to process one document. Might be our cost, and that type of overhead is what it takes. Now, the next thing is video. Companies are sitting on a lot of videos, a lot of excellent information inside of video. Now, if you can feed all of this information into a database, in AI, it's called a vector database. You can now use that information for your staff or your customers, so that they can talk to the AI, chatbot, voice, anything that any fashion and anywhere that you want that conversation to take place. It can reflect on all of your company documentation and provide intelligent answers. So, for example, just looking at the motorcycles, somebody might have a question about a particular replacement headlight for a particular motorcycle from 1963. Now, if somewhere in a document, perhaps a chain of emails or support tickets, somebody had said, well, if it was the 1963 with this metal stamp on the fork, on the left fork, then that indicates that it was actually the second generation, and you should look for this particular headlight that's compatible and it's made by the Ford company, and that'll work. And that kind of tribal knowledge is trapped within these companies, within the heads of the people that work at these companies. But it's also been written into all of our emails for the last, and support tickets, for the last 25 years. So if we can capture that unstructured information, feed it in to the AI, we can start to make sense of how this business works. And if you remember in the beginning, the company that came to us, the motorcycle company, said, we have a very unique business. And I think that statement is said by most every company. Everybody has a unique business. And what makes them unique is the knowledge that they have. And if I worked in a ball bearing company, I don't know much about ball bearings, but to me, they sound pretty straightforward. Just round spheres, little metal balls. I'm sure they have a diameter, and somebody must order them. Maybe they have different kinds of metals, but there's an entire set of tribal knowledge, scientific knowledge, and it's inside of these companies. Somebody has to just take this information and put it into the Commercient AI platform, and their AI will begin to work on their
And that's
data.
where the real savings is going to come from, right, Richard? That once you've got all of that information into your AI and your team can start leveraging all of that unstructured data that you've been gathering for years and years, that's where our teams really start to accelerate and get better and faster for our customers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you need to marry unstructured data and structured data. So it's one thing to be able to go and query, an AI or a human that's really intelligent about a product. And it's another thing to be able to then say, okay, I'd like to move forward with purchasing that item, the headlight, for example. Do you have some in stock? Now that's a database query. It's not the tribal knowledge. It's a real-time database query. So this has to be secure, and as well as that tribal knowledge, it has to also be secure. The unstructured data, but of course security is number one. You got to know who you're talking to. Are they authorized to request this information? Can they request additional information that they're not privy to? Maybe they might ask, what's the cost, the actual raw material, what's the raw cost from the supplier for that product? Well, perhaps a salesperson might be able to ask that question, but a customer definitely not. So security is important. And the other thing is making sure that when you're querying data, you have to make sure that it's not, the systems can't be manipulated. So inside of our security model, we have to make sure that people can't inject questions that trick the AI or the database into giving it information it's not privy to. So in security and tech and IT, working with databases and the internet, we've through the internet API days, we've all in the industry we've learned all the techniques to prevent that kind of things, such as SQL injection attacks and things like that. Amazing.
Okay, well, we're running close to the end of time here. I do have a couple of lightning round questions just to wrap us all together here. I'm going to start with you, Aubrey. These are true or false questions. I'd love you to answer for me and then just give me a little brief on it. So we've talked about it. True or false? Consumer ChatGPT can handle all of this stuff out of the box.
That's false.
False. Yes. And so we talked about Commercient AI and how we have built it out to work with these large, complex documents specifically for businesses. So Richard.
Beth,
yeah, go ahead.
Just for context, the consumer, you're absolutely right. Consumer ChatGPT, no. But to build corporate solutions, we have to use LLMs. LLMs are the models behind the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, etc. And we have to make use of those models and those data centers that are running those GPU servers. So when we talk about our solution, we might use, for example, the OpenAI API, which is the developers connection to ChatGPT's back-end services, or we can connect to any other LLM of the customer's choice. So if they said they wanted to run a private LLM, or if they wanted to run an LLM from Microsoft or Google, that would be perfectly feasible. It's just a matter of changing the connection to the LLM.
Awesome. So personalizing it to each customer, that's really going to help customers stand apart from their competitors in that space.
Yeah, totally. And then the security, some clients will want, some clients are looking to keep their information private to their local network. So they might stand up a GPU server. They might want to run a private LLM. They might want to run a vector database privately. All of those things can be achieved. It's just a matter of engineering it. These things cost money. So customer, if that's their need, that's what they might do.
Awesome. That comes into my next true or false question. This one's for you, Richard. So the cost of uploading these large documents, does it make it impossible for small businesses?
No. I think the motorcycle example was extreme, but even then, I mean, one-time cost of $2 a document, and if you have, I think they have 500 plus documents. I mean, you're looking at $1,000 one time to load them, and now you can chat with them for practically next to nothing from then forward. So it's not prohibitively expensive at all. In fact, so most companies would be spending next to nothing to get their documents loaded. They wouldn't be like those older 1960s documents. Might cost them pennies.
Amazing. Well, I believe that's all the time that we have today. Did either of you have any wrap-up comments or messages that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think it's going to become increasingly important to load these kinds of documents you have in a business, because I think the applications, once you have the text or once you have the information, it's just going to grow exponentially. The kind of applications that people are going to write against it. So I think it is something you just have to do to optimize your business.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah, I know we should try to stay on track, but two exciting things that we're seeing is one is so when we talk about Commerciant being able to communicate with the ERP and the CRM system, it was, as I described earlier, perhaps to answer questions about inventory availability or the price of a product, the price of 10 of that product. Perhaps a customer wants to ask about their balance. Maybe a salesperson asks what are the components that make up the bill of material for the product. And all of those queries are to live databases, right? And securely, right? And that it doesn't have to be connected to the actual live database. It can be connected to the cloud version of the live database, so a replica. Then you talk about what's becomes really powerful is taking actions. A customer says, I would like to order that product now, or a salesperson says, let's place an order for that product. Those kinds of interactions need to happen, and they need to again be posted to the back-end systems, whether it's a CRM or an ERP system. ERP meaning an accounting, inventory system, sales order system, such as SAP, Epicor, NetSuite, Acumatica, Intact. These are all and 100 more. Those are all the systems that we work with at Commerciant. That's our specialty, as well as the CRMs. So reading and writing to those systems securely is really powerful. And the reason why it becomes powerful is because today we think of things as single applications, right? We load an app and it does one thing. We load an application on our laptop or go to a website and it does one thing. What's going to happen is these chatbots are going to be able to communicate with each other with multiple AIs across. Sorry, I should say multiple AI components will all be able to be interconnected across the internet, so that we can have chatbots serviced by other companies being able to connect to Commerciant's MCP server in order to query inventory availability in Sage 100 or Sage Intacct, as an example. And then when that remote system needs to post a sales order for that headlight, it comes across to the Commerciant MCP server and posts into the ERP system as an order, and the order details are passed back, and the chatbot says, "Thank you for your order. It's been placed. The order number is 123." So those kinds of interconnected capabilities are important because it's kind of like what happened in the internet, but it's the internet on steroids now. But the other thing that's going to happen is the interface has already changed. So I think if you went back 3 years ago to when ChatGPT came out, you'd think, yeah, this is nice. I do like this, but I mean, how could this possibly become an interface to my daily work? Chatting to a chatbot, it's just not, I'm used to clicking buttons, drop downs, and clicking submit. Well, that's just what we've become trained on, right? If we take away the Windows or the Mac or browser GUI or app GUI, we didn't have a mouse, in the 1980s. We had keyboards and green screens, and people would just be incredibly fast on the keyboard, tabbing between fields and just entering data at rapid speed. In fact, I think some of the GUI slowed them down. That's because I know that from training a lot of people from text-based systems to GUI. But where I'm going with this is the GUI is going to be augmented with chat. And Beth, we were actually talking yesterday about an example where we were trying to build a marketing process, sales and marketing process, and we were going to build a screen, web browsers, a web page, and the customer would be taken through some steps and then eventually their screen would update and they would go through another step and so on, like a workflow process. And in the end, we said, you know what, let's make this into a chatbot, because now it's a little bit easier to program. I don't have to program all the logic of what if they do this step and don't do that step? What if they do that step but they don't complete the third step? And I can now simply create a chatbot, give it the instructions in English of the steps and the requirements to get to the final step, and I can employ agents, and they can figure out in business language what it takes to go through these steps, and they can chat with the user and guide them through the steps. And if the user says, "Well, I'm finished, let me get to step 4 so I can be completed," the LLM can evaluate and say, "I'm sorry, the rules say you need to complete the prior steps and you haven't. So let's get you finished up on step 3." And
that's incredible. I'm so excited for these changes. It's really making a lot of business processes, a lot of sales process online, so much easier for the consumer. I think it's going to be a really interesting time to be in this space. And you set it up beautifully, Richard. Just as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about next time. And that's our agent stuff and our chatbots, not another chatbot. These are really intelligent chatbots fueled by your data to speak to your customers the way you want them to. So I'm really excited to talk to you again, Richard, talk to you again, Aubrey, about all of the amazing things that are happening with Commercian AI. We're at time now. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments. We look at those all of the time. We'll make sure that we answer those in our next call. Again, Richard, Aubrey, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, B.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks. Take care.
It was great seeing y'all. I will talk to you all soon.